All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Councilmember Al Austin, and I am very, very delighted to be moderating this amazing panel of distinguished experts in the law enforcement criminal justice field. This is supposed to be an uncomfortable conversation, and it is an uncomfortable conversation when we talk about particularly the criminal justice system today in America, today in Long Beach, California, and across our country. Again, I'm joined by a distinguished panel, and I'm looking forward to introducing them to you. I want to start with somebody who I don't think needs a lot of introduction, but I want to start with to my right with Chief Robert Luna. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Councilmember Austin. It's always been a pleasure to work around you and how progressive and how thoughtful you are and how much you serve our community. So my name's Robert Luna. I recently retired as the police chief in Long Beach, where I was appointed and served for the last 7 years. I actually served in the police department for the last 36 years, where I worked a variety of assignments and I promoted through every rank. When I think about my job, the best part about it was the level of engagement that we have here in Long Beach, which I think is unique and different. We're far from being perfect, but we're always focused on the community, and that's what I did. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to this very quote-unquote uncomfortable conversation.
And we want to thank you for being here because we know you could be doing other things right now, like campaigning for sheriff, so thank you. And we also have some guests from out of town. And I think this is very, very important to recognize that, you know, we have local folks' perspectives, but we also have invited some subject matter experts from out of town. And so I know Chanel is visiting us from Portland.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're from Portland, Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, myself. I am a victim advocate. Before this, I worked in the Minneapolis Police Department as their advocate. I started out in DV, but you know, once cops get to know you, they ask for help in every other department. So I branched out to homicide, sexual assault, and kid crimes as well. But thank you for having us. And right now I'm doing gun group gang crimes. And if you see me sweating, I'm a hottie, I'm sorry. So I apologize in advance. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And can you just tell us a little bit more about exactly what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a victim advocate, you know, we get assigned our cases and we accompany victims to court. We let them know about critical stage hearings. Victims have a constitutional right in the state of Oregon, as in Washington. And one part of that is being notified of critical stage hearings and going to court, and that's what I do as well. And also offering outside resources and resources that are also in the community, and as well as building relationships in the community. You know, as we know, on this panel, representation matters, and I will be frank with you, I am the only African-American advocate in our office, which is a heavy load in itself, because we know that in terms of demographics, we are overrepresented. And I take a lot of the bias crimes as well. I'll get into that later. But so it's a heavy load, but it's an honor as well when I see my victims, especially the young black girls who are like, they're so excited and their eyes are just huge when they see me walk into the room. It's somebody else, because usually they're the only person of color either in the court or in the conference room. So.
Well, thank you for what you do, and we're going to get more into some.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You touched on. And Mr. Perry, welcome.
Welcome.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Al, and thank you for Andy Street for putting on this wonderful presentation. And thank everyone who is here today. I have been part of the criminal justice system in different ways almost my entire life. I started off kind of living in South Central Los Angeles and having an interaction with the criminal justice system that's different from the interaction that I would later have. I went to law school and became a deputy district attorney and prosecuted cases ranging from DUI to homicide. And I did that for a while, ended up leaving the district attorney's office, and eventually, after working for a large law firm, started my own law practice here in Long Beach. And a part of that practice has been defending people who have been accused of crimes. A part of that practice has also been filing civil rights litigation for people who allege that they have been the victim of police misconduct. So this is a very, very important conversation for us to have. I'm really enthusiastic to be able to share the stage with so many people of different perspectives. So that's a little bit about me and my background. I'm also a little nervous today because my daughter is going to her prom. So I may need some police assistance at some point tonight if my daughter doesn't arrive on time. But thank you very much.
Well, great, thank you. And we are very honored to have the Honorable Judge Banfield with us, CAMARA Banfield. Thank you for joining us here all the way from Seattle?
Clark County. So Chanel, and you'll meet Glenn, they work in Multnomah County, and we're like the sister county, but we're Washington, so we're right across the bridge. So we work in 2 different states. Yeah, so I'm...
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I started out my career also as a deputy prosecutor. I first started out at the city attorney's office in Vancouver, Washington, and then moved on to the prosecutor's office, where I did the same range of crimes from DUI up through homicide, focused mostly on domestic violence and sexual assault for most of my career, and then became the chief criminal at the Clark County Prosecutor's Office, so I supervised the entire criminal division. And then after that, I became a judge, which was not that long ago. And in all of those phases, I was the first and only Black prosecutor, city attorney, now first Black judge. So being the first is a big deal. We shouldn't always have to be the first anymore, but we still are, and it is a heavy burden. There's a higher expectation of competence when you're the first and when you're a person of color. So, but I met it head on. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you on the Supreme Court one day. Thank you. Welcome. And I would say this is your other half, not the better half.
Yeah.
He's also a criminal justice professional, a deputy DA. Please introduce yourself, Mr. Banfield.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having us all the way here in Long Beach. My name is Glenn Banfield, and I'll say it, she's the better half. Unlike these two, I'm still at the prosecutor's office. I've been a deputy district attorney going on 20 years now, coming out of law school where I met my wife at the University of Oregon. And I've been at the district attorney's office my entire career. Like them, I prosecuted a range of crimes from misdemeanors all the way through homicide cases. Most recently, I have been the chief deputy in our office. We've got about 90 attorneys in our office and about another 100 staff in our office. And I supervise a division that does misdemeanor crimes, juvenile crimes, domestic violence crimes, and also support enforcement, going after collecting money from dads, or people, not just dads, excuse me, doing that. But I'm also involved heavily in policy decisions within our office that affect the community that we live in Portland, Oregon. But I'm really happy to be here and engage in this uncomfortable conversation.
Thank you so much. This is an exciting panel. You can see we have a lot of experience here. We have individuals who, there's a common theme here. They're the first, they're the few in terms of representation in their perspective fields or respective fields. And so I think it's important that we jump right in and talk about the racial inequities in law enforcement and criminal justice. And we want to have a conversation today about, highlighting what those are, but also looking at what solutions and how we can improve the respective fields and better serve our communities. So we'll jump right in with the first question, and I'm going to leave it open. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the criminal justice system today? We'll start over here with Glenn.
Well, I think there are a lot of different challenges facing the criminal justice system today, but I think, in part to kind of understand why we have these challenges, we need to look at the historical context of where we came from and why we are here today. And I think it's no secret to most of us and to most people in our society that the criminal justice system, in large part, was created and designed to criminalize being black or criminalize being people of color. I mean, you can look at the historical context as when when slavery was abolished, that's when we began the criminalization of skin color and being black in this nation. That's when incarceration in prisons started increasing with people of color. Before, they were on the plantations. So then they build the jails and they build the prisons, and look it up, it's real, I think we all know that. And that's when you began criminalization of vagrancy laws. Again, being black, you don't have a place to stay, you sleep in the park, that's a law. And what do? They criminalize it, they put you in custody, and then you got to go work on a chain gang or the plantation. So that's where we came from. That's where the system was designed, originated, and came from, and that's what created so many of the problems that we had today. And we'll talk a little bit more and get some other views, but in my opinion, one of the things that we need to do is to have more representation, have more people that look, frankly, like me in the criminal justice system that are handling these issues and handling these cases throughout the country.
Thank you for that very candid response.
Yeah, let me just kind of piggyback off of that. I think that history that Glenn talked about is an issue that we need to talk about and we need to confront. It's a history, though, to pick up what Glenn said, that went from convict leasing all the way to the 60s, the 70s. I remember when I was, a young man in Los Angeles, we couldn't go to certain places. So this was in the 1970s. We couldn't, my father, who worked as a janitor, when he drove into Downey, because they had these sundowner laws, he had to, if he left his workplace after a certain time, he needed either to have a note or they had to call the police to let them know that he would be coming through. And this was in 1960, 1970. I raise this to say that there's for most of our country's history, the criminal justice system has been adverse to African Americans. And because of that, and here in Long Beach, I'm so proud to say, under the leadership of Chief Luna, we've made so many strides here in Long Beach. But I think one of the issues is that when you have a situation where the history is so stifling, the distrust is so large. And it's going to take just like it took 300 years for people, for the oppression to take place, it's going to take a long time for us to develop the trust that we need amongst one another.
Very, very, very right on point. We don't live very far from one of those cities. Driving up Atlantic Avenue, driving up Cherry, in Long Beach, you have to, there's another city literally right in the middle of Long Beach, and that's Signal Hill. Just the other day, that city recognized the 40th anniversary of the Ron Settles incident where this African-American male was driving through Signal Hill and ran into an unfortunate situation and ended up mysteriously dying in jail. And it was one that made, I think, national news. So, we're not that far removed from it, and we're not that far from it right here in our own city. I wanted to, pass it over to Chief Luna to respond to that as well.
Public trust and legitimacy, for me, is the #1 challenge, at least in law enforcement. But to everybody listening or viewing this segment, I'm here to tell you that I believe you can make an absolute difference. I talked about my professional background, but it is actually my personal background that influences me more than anything else. I grew up in an unincorporated area of East Los Angeles, oldest of 3 kids, didn't learn English until I went to school. My father was also a janitor. Mother sold food on the street. I saw a lot of social inequity when I was growing up. But instead of becoming angry, and it did make me angry, it motivated me to become a police officer. And I dreamt of being in that position for years, and the city of Long Beach allowed me to fulfill that dream. When we participated, and I say we because it wasn't only me as an individual, but our community transformed the Long Beach Police Department. It was a lot of my experiences growing up where people would come to places like this and say, we are being mistreated by law enforcement. To me, it wasn't just a government response, it was a personal response. So I just encourage all of you not only to listen to what's taking place today, but be part of the change. Have a plan, communicate, get educated like everybody else is on this panel, and make a difference. You can do this.
Chief, we have worked together now for close to, 18 years or so. I began my public service kind of career as a commissioner on the Citizen Police Complaint Commission. I was appointed by then Mayor Beverly O'Neill, and I had an opportunity to work with then, I think, Lieutenant Robert Luna at the time, and he was staffed to that commission. And oftentimes the cases, the complaints would come before that group. And, we as civilians, we were looking at it and drawing our own opinions. He was there as a subject matter expert to give us training, background, whatnot. But it was, 17, 18 years ago that I realized that this gentleman was different, right? He was compassionate. He had a different lens and an outlook as a police officer. And so I'm glad that you were able to finally make it as a police chief to lead this department and really help to change the culture. And I know that will continue long after your retirement. So thank you so much. So the next question, we've talked about the racial disparities. We've talked about, the lived experiences that these individuals have, but the system, there are a lot of disparities in the system. The criminal justice system, many of those justice involved are of color, but not many of the people who are justice administrators are of color. How do we change that? And I would love to hear your perspectives on that.
So first, what I'd like to say is you have to make it a place that people could want to stay at. So you can get them, you can recruit them, you can bring them, but then they're in a hostile environment. And so, like I said, there's still not another black prosecutor in Clark County. And if they get one, I don't know how long they'll keep them. I loved my work there, but it was such a hostile environment all the way up. We'd sit down. When the crimes would come in the morning from the night before, we'd throw out all of the different files, and all the prosecutors would come in and grab their departments and start looking through them, and then you could talk about what you should be charging because you had all the feedback from the people around. And so if I were to raise an issue like this guy was stopped because he was black, or no one would have, if that was a black person who had been at his door, he would have shot him and it would have been okay. And now if you say those things, I was always defeated and put down. I wasn't defeated. They tried to defeat me. So I think that you have to, if you're going to bring them in, you have to make sure you've got the policies in place, and so that they'll stay, and that they are comfortable staying in that situation. Some people are okay with being uncomfortable, and I'm one of those people, and I'm okay with making other people uncomfortable. So you got to have thick skin, and you got to keep pushing forward. Even now, as the first black judge, and they're doing so much equity work, but I've had a colleague tell me, we've done enough. This pendulum swung too far. He was comfortable enough saying that to me, like the first black judge. Like he was comfortable telling me that we shouldn't do any more work on diversity, any more work on bringing people in, and that now it's time for us to, we need more work. We need more for our white man. So you have to make the place comfortable enough for people to stay. So it doesn't, recruitment's not the problem. It's giving them a place to stay.
Wow. That's straight up no chaser right there.
I'm going to piggyback off of what the judge said. I agree with that. You need to have an environment where you feel supported. And when issues come up, you know you can go to your direct superior and be comfortable talking about those things. In the period of George Floyd, and like I said before, I was a victim advocate in that particular police department. But I was very clear with people in my office, I need to leave one day in particular, and I got a very professional HR answer, basically no. And I was very upset, but I was more upset that I would have to explain my blackness in a professional environment, and then validate my feelings about fear. I mean, we live in Portland, Oregon, and during that time, Glenn, every day we were having a protest and then at night it was tripping, like it turned into full-on riot, And so
It was like a war zone.
I wanted to get, yeah, right? I wanted to get out of my workplace beforehand. Everything popped off, and it was very clear. And that was unfortunate. But we have to have people that are thick-skinned, and I'm very good at being uncomfortable. And I worked with cops before this, and so they knew what Chanel wanted, and they gave it to me. And we help domestic violence victims with that. And so I'm not shy. And if you're not shy, come work with me.
Well, it's clear that you have to have thick skin and you have to be tough to work in this field. Glenn, did you have anything to add?
No, I think, just to agree with what they say, you do need to create a culture, an environment that is welcoming, and one that kind of has the same philosophy of the person that's coming in. And that's something that we're trying to do in my office, is identify with the issues that are important to you that help you make the decisions that affect other people's lives. Because that's what we do as prosecutors. We make huge decisions that affect other people's lives. And each of us make decisions for different reasons. And so we want to foster that environment where we respect and value your decisions based on your experiences. And that's how you try to create and foster that culture that's going to keep people of color, particularly in prosecutor's office, which is, they're growing more and more in numbers, but it's still small. Throughout the nation, you see a little bit more and more. In my office, when I first started, almost 20 years ago, I was one of two. And then I was only one for many, many years, but I can say now that there are three of us, and 3 women. So we've branched out.
3 black women.
3 black women.
Yeah, a lot of women.
Yeah. 3 black women and 3
women.
black men in my office. So that's 6 out of the 90 attorneys that we have versus 1 when I started out. So the numbers are growing, and and I think leadership helps kind of define that philosophy and create that culture. I like to think that that's what I try to add to the workforce.
And I agree with that. We need the leadership. We need good people. So we need more black prosecutors, more black police officers, more women police officers, more Latino. We need across the board diversity in our police force. But the thing that struck me when I was a prosecutor is that we didn't always have prosecutors who came from a socioeconomic background to understand the people and who were coming through the criminal justice system. So oftentimes, even when you had black prosecutors, who sometimes had lived a life that was very different from the people who they were coming in contact with. So the diversity that I would like to see, in addition to what has been discussed, is a greater diversity of people who have had experiences with the criminal justice system, and that often means black people, but that more often means poor people, because poor people are the people who come most in contact with the criminal justice system. And I think when we start to get more input from people who are involved in the criminal justice system in that level is when we'll start to see the most profound changes within the criminal justice system.
No, that reminds me of an old saying. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, you know, or your lunch. So I think something that needs to be, I think, elevated here, because on the city council, I'm watching recruitment and hiring practices. I work in workforce myself as a labor professional. I know recruitment for minorities, particularly in policing, is really challenging. Can you speak to that, Chief? What can we do to get more Black and Latinos, minorities interested? And I'm specifically, I know that there's a real deficit with Black recruits in law enforcement. Can you speak to that?
We do have an absolute gap in recruitment when it comes to specifically African American men, and even worse with women. We need to work harder. We need to do much more to make sure that we're doing everything we can to not only attract African American men and women, but retain them as well. And one of the challenges that I faced as a chief was that I would go into a council meeting, or I'd go into community meetings, and many times people in these organized meetings were very angry at the police. And the things that they would say, not only about the police, but the system itself, causes people to be turned off by it. Oh my God, I can't do that. You don't like me. And we need to do a better job, not only in law enforcement, but every organization represented here, that not only in recruitment, but the training of, and then developing the cultures where people can come forward and they're comfortable. We've had our challenges in the department where I've worked, where things have come up, and it's like, oh my God, that did not just happen. But what has to happen there? Somebody in my position as a leader has to establish the culture that says, we are not going to accept that. We are going to change. And then in policing, it's a little difficult because a lot of the personnel choices we make cannot go public. And I wish they could, because then it would show people that, yes, we're a great place to work. You can come and serve your community, and you can make a huge difference. And like I said earlier, look at these faces up here. And if we're in charge and we're able to push us forward, that's how you make the change that's necessary.
And it's, I think, important to note, we just had a deputy chief promoted, Ty Burford, here in the city of Long Beach, African-American chief, and it's good to have that balance and diversity in the leadership, I think, as well. And then recruiting-wise, is there any suggestions on how we can change that dynamic with recruits in the future? The Long Beach PD, the Sheriff's Department, law enforcement overall, any strategies in place that we want to move forward with?
From a policing perspective, it's developing relationships in our own community, showing our neighborhoods that we are here, we're present, and by the way, shouldn't be known for taking people to jail and having negative impact on families. We have to engage a community at a different level where it's more to see somebody in uniform, you're seeing a hero, somebody who actually listens, gives you an opportunity, and maybe provides services for people and guides them a different way. That's how you build the foundation. Yes, we have more work to do there, and we have to do it. We don't have a choice.
You know, I always looked at it as peace over police, right? If people look at law enforcement as peace officers rather than police officers, I think that would change the psyche quite a bit. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think maybe the uncomfortable truth about what we're talking about is within the community that I lived in, there was not a lot of enthusiasm for individuals to join the police force because the police force were thought of as being bad people. And there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm when I went to become a member of the district attorney's office because there was a us versus them mentality. So part of, I think, I think part of that is work that needs to be done with various police officers, various prosecutors' offices, but part of that work within the African American community has to be a development of a mindset that I can go to work in a district attorney's office even if I'm the first black person, the only black person there, and I can make a change there. So we have to develop a mindset that we can actually become more and more of the solution by working inside of some of these organizations.
Yeah, and you know, I've talked a lot about this with my boss, and I think it really starts early. I mean, we need to start recruiting 8th graders and 7th graders and 6th graders. Last week I spoke at a school to a bunch of 8th graders, a class, diverse class in the inner city of Portland, and that's what we need to be doing. You know, when I went in there, they were just all like smiles, and you know, they were interested in what I had to say and talk about my office, and we need to get in there with kids early, exactly to your point, so you can kind of start fostering that idea of, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I can do that. Oh, it's not what I thought. So we got to get in there early and start recruiting the people within our community by getting into the classrooms at a very young age. Believe it or not, they don't teach criminal justice in class, you know, and in the inner cities, a lot of those people end up in the system not knowing anything about the system, which is kind of ludicrous to me that our society does not have, that we don't teach that basic structure of our civics, that basic structure of our society. So I think the recruitment needs to start at a very, very young age.
Quickly, just to add, in fact, right now in Clark County, our local bar, we're going to try to start a street law program. And there's not that many in the country so far, but we've got a really good model in King County, Washington. And it's got the full curriculum, and it teaches the kids about their rights. It teaches them about how the system works specifically. It teaches them the pathway to a place where they can be a part of that change. And so I mean, that's the thing that I spend most of my time doing, is doing Boys and Girls Club stuff, my volunteer time, and going to the schools and talking to these kids and letting them know, like, you are the change. You can't just sit back here. If you want change, if you're feeling uncomfortable, then build the comfortable space for you to be in. And it's frustrating to watch our community just take a step back instead of diving in, because that's the only way we're going to create change. That comes from you. It comes from hard work. It comes from and it comes from you just like being willing to barrel through. And so I think you're right, and that's where the recruitment starts. Our office, our prosecutor's office as well, they don't go out to all the universities that have people of color. They don't go talk to the multicultural bars and stuff like that. And so they're never going to bring people in unless they do that. So if you're starting at that high level, but like Glenn said, it's getting there at the young age, showing them that he says, one of the things you said was it's not the system, it's not what it was. You thought it was this, but that's not what it was. I'm saying, hey, that's what it is, but you can change that. So that's I think what we got to do.
For those of you who are in the classrooms and reaching out to young people, I just say thank you so much. You are trailblazers. Each and every one of you, in a lot of ways, are trailblazers, and I think our young people need to see people in these roles and these models to shape the future in a lot of ways. So thank you so much. So I think it's important. Maybe we went in a reverse order, but what do you all think influences the changes in the criminal justice system?
Like you said, who's at the table? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right?
I've heard leadership. It's who at the table, but oftentimes it's conflict, right?
Right.
It's some sort of flash. It's also some sort of conflict. It was Rodney King in Los Angeles in 1992. There was some changes impacting LAPD. Obviously, George Floyd in 2020, and a number of events, leading up to that created a flashpoint of conflict, and politicians, lawmakers, administrators in the public sphere had to address and make changes because the public was crying out on it. I think the George Floyd event was one that You know, never before had anybody seen somebody murdered on television, national TV, played over and looped over and over and over again. And not only did it upset black folks, but it just upset the entire country. Everyone's actually saw it in their face. So I saw that as an event. What other events and impacts actually impact the changes in the criminal justice system in a positive way? How can we utilize those or use those events to move change and then get more people of color involved in on this side of the
Well, quickly, what I want to say is that we need to be careful about needing events to move us forward. Right now, everyone's exhausted from that, right? Because they were all in during that time. So now we need to be able to move. We need to be able to do it when the water's calm. We need to still be making those policies and moving forward. We shouldn't have to watch a man die on TV. We shouldn't have to ever look at that. It's not something we need to look at. It's like I would refuse to let my children see that, because that's just trauma. So I want to work during a time when the water's calm. I want to keep people at the table and not let them be too tired to keep doing this work. So for me, yes, conflict, but we don't need that big conflict. We need to work in times when the waters are calm.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you know, and some of the things that we need to look at, or what we need to do to effectuate those changes, in my office, we're really big on data, we're really big on transparency, and we're really big on community engagement. And those are the three things that we use in our office to shape the policy. And it wasn't always like that, but we just got a new guy at the helm, Mike Schmidt, and I'll put a plug in for Mr. Schmidt, who he believes wholeheartedly in making decisions based on the data that we see. You know, not on so many prosecutors historically made decisions on gut feeling. Yeah, this is the right way to punish this person, or this is how this should be handled. And we're moving away from that, and we look at all of the data of what it's telling us, and we publish that data for members of our community to see what's going on from the streets straight to the jail. And then we engage them in a conversation of what can we do to change these policies that's funneling people basically from schools to the prisons. So data, transparency, and community engagement, those are the things that we look at to try to change how things are now.
Yeah, I would say education too. Glenn and I used to attend Community Peace Collaborative in Portland, and that brought everybody to the table, PPB, Sheriff's office, community members, mayor's office, and all of us, I mean, like truly, you felt really good. You felt like a family there, and you really could hash things out. And we obviously always didn't agree, and but we had respect for each other that we could talk it out. And a lot of policy change came out of that meeting. And I'll be real with you, we solved a couple of homicide cases out of that meeting. And because so-and-so told so-and-so, like, hey, you know what, you need to holler at Chanel, she's kind of cool, like, and that's how you get the word on the street and the build and the trust. This I don't want to say business, but it is relationship. And that's real. And black folks are relationship. Black and brown, how you doing? I'm not trying to leave you out here, but we're a relationship, you know? And so, that's what I work on, and that's what I do. And like I said, I solve things, and we solve things, and that's how you get it done.
Thank you for that, Chief. I know that Mr. Banfield talked about data and utilizing data. Can you follow up on that, and obviously add your perspective, but follow up on that in terms of how Long Beach is incorporating some of that in its policing practices?
Yes, we're data-driven. Once upon a time, we would get a lot of pressure from our community, from our elected officials. Murders go up, shootings go up, you're going to do something about it now. Yeah. What we're doing now is we slow down. Yeah. Our priority is still to save lives, but we're looking at data. Where is it happening? And instead of just pounding with a bunch of police officers on overtime, we're more thoughtful about approaching it. We've evolved. We have still room to improve, but we're evolving to address some of these challenges. I want to use a specific example in Long Beach, just switching gears about relationships. and why it's important to be at the table. After the George Floyd murder in Long Beach, we had a lot of people who were upset, and they needed to be upset. There was a lot of yelling going on, and I think a lot of communication was, everybody started digging their trenches. What I found is I had 3 African-American men who approached me as a chief of police. One is a community leader, 2 were ministers. And they said, here is I want to say it was a 10-page document where we want to engage you to change your use of force policy. And I looked at this document and it was amazing. Fast forward, that began a path to put us with our community advisory board that recommends policy to us. And it came from these 3 men who wanted to make a difference and didn't want to yell. They wanted to change and influence policy. They did. We modified our use of force policy. That board is still in existence at the Long Beach Police Department and looking at other policies. So these relationships do matter. You come forward and you get the door open, you get your foot in it, and we start making the change that's necessary.
So what I'm hearing is that we don't make good policies, we don't make the best decisions when we're emotional, right? We need to have some calm. We have to have cool heads. We need to be able to take it in and breathe and make the best decisions for our community and for our
But that doesn't mean you're
constituents.
not passionate about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
exactly. Passion's got to be there.
Yes.
And it sounds like we have to listen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Make sure we're listening to our community.
Well, I think we have to listen, but what we have to do also, we have to hold people accountable across the board. I think where the mistrust has arisen within the criminal justice system, it has been because police officers who have committed wrongful acts have traditionally not been held accountable. And what happens is we know this in the community because we have seen it with our own eyes. And then when we see the same police officer driving down the street, we know that that officer has not been held accountable. Here in Long Beach, one of the privileges that I had an opportunity to serve on the Civil Service Commission, and I know the wonderful work that we're doing in Long Beach. When we do have those officers, there's a process that they go through here in Long Beach. But we also have to do it within our criminal justice system. When I was a prosecutor, far too often, the judges did not, in my view, turn a blind eye to when there was police misconduct that took place in our criminal courtrooms. So when our judges did not maintain the same rules for both sides, it eroded the confidence that the community had with our criminal justice system. What we've always said, or what I've always said, is tell me the rules and then apply those rules fairly to everyone who presents inside the courtroom. And I think when we have that, at the very least, at the bottom, we're going to have a situation where people feel like, okay, at least everybody who came before this court was treated in a fair way. The last thing I'd like to say,
Not always fair, though.
Right.
I just gotta tell you.
The same way,
This is
the
what
same
we've done
way.
in our system really quickly is what we've done is like, we've lowered it down now. So now we arrest everybody. Now everybody's incarcerated. Instead of us saying incarceration doesn't work, we'll just make sure, if we want to show fair, then we should start arresting everyone instead of backing off of where we were wrong. So go ahead.
Yes. And then the last thing that I'd like to say is that the whole criminal justice system ends up treating symptoms of societal problems that already exist. And I've always been very, very sympathetic in some ways to police officers because the problems that exist in society, the poverty, the mental health issues, the drug abuse, the homelessness, the police often didn't make these problems, but they are tasked at going out and responding to problems that our society in many ways have completely ignored. And then when something goes wrong in that very, very bad situation, because something will go wrong in that situation, then the police, because they have been the people going out, are held accountable. But these problems that cause crime, these are all of our problems, all of our responsibilities, and we all have a role in trying to fix those problems so that the police don't necessarily have to come out.
Wow.
And really briefly, I'm glad that you brought up accountability, because that's real and that's true, and we have to keep each other accountable. There are several different inflection points into the criminal justice system. The police on the streets that makes the arrests and bring the cases, to the prosecutors who charge the cases, to the judges who make the final decisions. And you were talking about the judges holding everybody accountable the same. And it's the same for the prosecutor's office. And our office recently made some decisions that were very uncomfortable with the Portland police. And, you know, those are like our brothers in crimes. I mean, we work closely with them a lot of the times. And there are some really good police, and there are some not so good police, you know, be clear. And we know who they are. And we have a committee that works on identifying those people and keeping them out of the courtrooms, as it should be when we know what they do. But for what our office did, we actually charged and prosecuted police officers that were preventing the protesters. And it was a very, very unpopular decision for Mike Schmidt in our office to arrest and prosecute and convict police officers for doing their job with the protesters in Portland. So it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult when you have a relationship like that with a law enforcement partner, and then you're prosecuting them, keeping them, holding them accountable. It was a very difficult situation, very unpopular decision, but very necessary.
I really appreciate the wisdom being shared here today, the candor. We're almost out of time, but I want to just go around and ask one last question. We're talking about a system, right? A system, for better or for worse, is the system that we have to work with. We need more diversity among DAs. We need more diversity among judges. We need more diversity among our police officers. Today in 2022, is the system, or do you see the system changing as a result of events over the last couple of years?
Just briefly, I do. I mean, I think I see it changing slowly, maybe not fast enough, but I see personally every day it changing from the people that I work with and why they make the decisions to do what they do. Why are we going to take this person, and instead of put them in prison, we're going to put them into a program that's going to help deal with their cognitive deficiencies. You know, changing the way we actually handle them. We had it backwards for a very long time, that the right thing to do was to punish you and to send you to prison. That was backwards thinking. And we need to forget that. We need to relearn how to treat people, right? How to take care of each other in a community as family members, right? Sit down and try to make a decision, not just punish. That we've failed that experiment for a very long time, and now it's time to start doing something different.
Yes. You can drop the mic on that one. Judge Banfield.
Has the system changed, or how is it? Can it change? Yeah, yes, it's changing. It can change. It can stop changing, though. I mean, so that's the thing. Anything that you start could stop. So it's important that we all engage and we just keep working towards that. I will just quickly, because I know that we're almost done. We have these kind of conversations at home all the time. It's our poor kids. So, but you know, the other day we were talking about how much representation matters, and the next day, GLEN received a letter from an inmate that he had prosecuted on a very serious offense, and he was in prison. And that letter, he walked through, he just was saying that just walking into that courtroom and seeing someone who looked like him, he had dreadlocks, he had the same skin tone, he was struggling to take responsibility for what he did, and now he's in prison and able to think about it. And he's like, I realized that it wasn't my skin color or my dreadlocks that put me in this situation, because I can see where you are, and you treated me with so much respect. And he's like, I'm changed. I want to get out there and do something different now. And so it's just, that's so beautiful. That's what change is. That's why representation matters. Yes, we can continue to change if we keep doing the right stuff, hiring the right people, changing the policies as we get the data.
Second chances matter too.
Yes, yes, yes.
I got one. The criminal justice system has changed by leaps and bounds, not only the last 2 years, but since I started in 1995 as a DA, we were in the middle of the 3 strikes law. And when I was a prosecutor, I would get jury verdicts sending people to prison for a long time in 15, 20 minutes. And the thought process back then was a thought process that we're just going to lock them up, throw away the key. So where we've come from 1995 to 2022, we've come a great distance. But there's still a bunch of work that really needs to be done. And I feel like here in Long Beach, we're doing a lot of that work that needs to be done. And the representation that we've talked about matters a whole lot. And more voices who participate in the process matters a whole lot.
I love that this is called the uncomfortable truth, right? And we're having these conversations because I feel like as a black person in a predominant white environment, you kind of get tasked as the president of black people. Like, your white counterparts come in your office and they're like,
What do I do?
You know, I had a cop, it was great, back in Minneapolis, and he was cool, but he was like mid-50s, and he was trying to relate to me. And he was like, Chanel, what's happening? And I'm like, hi. And he goes, did you hear Sherman Helmsley died? And I'm like, how old do you think I am? And he was like, yeah. I walked away. I'm like, what just happened? But that was him trying to relate to me. So I say that story to say that, you know, in these individual spaces, that, you know, that's where you build the relationship. I do see it changing because I say to them, and they come in my office, and I'm talking about chief prosecutors, whatever, you know, we have to have these uncomfortable conversations, and it's a lot of trust between, because I know they're thinking, oh, I don't want to say anything to offend Chanel. I like Chanel. Okay, we're here, let's talk about it. But also respecting that I'm not gonna give you all my juice either. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just a walking like encyclopedia and just gonna tell you about black folks and the history. Look, I gotta go eat a burger, you know what I mean? Like, I got stuff to do, okay? So, yes, I do believe the last couple of years have made changes. I think that, I think white folks are trying to have the language and be comfortable to talk with black counterparts, right? And then we have to be open to that too, because we have to be uncomfortable as well, because they have a lot of like assumptions because they're filling in the blank. And so at the end of the day, I tell them, get a black friend. And not a black friend like, oh, I know Tyrone from work, right? No, I'm talking about somebody who comes to your house. You text when you're going through it, and that's real. And that's how you build relationships, and then you really know. I have a couple of homegirls that are white, and I've known them since I was 12, but they know what's up. They know to eat all the chicken off of this wing and all of the things when they come to my house and know how to snap peas, and I'm going to shut up. But thank you, yes. I do believe it's changing.
Straight up, no chaser.
I cannot top that.
Aww.
The answer to the question for me is yes, it has changed. With the police department, our policies, our training, the level of accountability, if you look at it today and you go back even 3 years, it is very, very different. But here's my warning. We have a lot of work to do. We have so much work to do. Pay attention to what's happening out there. And I can tell you this because I'm currently running for office, but there are people out there who are trying to scare people into going backwards. Crime is going up. You watch for this person, blaming it on a DA or just on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to be on our toes. We've got to look at data. Do not let people scare us into going backwards to things that did not work. Let's be smart and figure out what worked and what didn't. That way we save the generation of tomorrow.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that, folks, thank you to this great panel. A lot of wisdom here. That was the uncomfortable truth. We want to thank you all for joining us and look forward to continuing this conversation, but continuing the work together to improve our law enforcement and criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.